The Naxidian Empire prided itself on having the most sophisticated scanning technology in the known galaxy. Their quantum detection arrays could identify a micrometeoroid from 50 light-years away, analyze its molecular composition, and predict its trajectory with perfect accuracy. So when Fleet Director Zinvax received reports of an unidentified vessel at the edge of their space, she treated it as a routine matter. Another derelict, most likely, she mused, her crystalline fingers tapping against the control panel. The massive command center of the Naxidian flagship Eternal Vigilance hummed with activity, its bioorganic displays casting a soft purple glow across the chamber. Director, preliminary scans complete, announced First Observer Krell, his photoreceptors pulsing with confusion. The vessel appears to be of human origin, but something's not right. Zinvax glided across the deck, her hover field generating small ripples in the air. Elaborate. It's a research vessel, designation Prometheus Axiom. No visible weapons, minimal shielding, standard human construction materials. But our deep scans can't penetrate beyond the hull. It's as if the scan beams are being reflected back at us. The director's crystalline form shifted colors, from its usual cerulean to a deeper indigo of concern. Humans were notorious for their unpredictability, but their technology was generally well understood. This was different. Launch probe drones, she ordered. Full spectrum analysis. 3 sleek, diamond-shaped drones detached from the Eternal Vigilance, their quantum engines leaving trails of purple light as they approached the human vessel. The Prometheus Axiom remained motionless, its dark hull absorbing the starlight like a void in space. First Observer Krell monitored the incoming data streams, his consciousness directly linked to the ship's systems. Drones approaching scanning range, initiating deep scan. Wait. His voice crackled with static. Director, the drones are experiencing some kind of feedback loop. The command center's displays flickered, showing corrupted data streams and impossible readings. The drone's transmitted images of the human ship began to distort, showing multiple overlapping versions of the vessel, each slightly different from the others. Shut down the scan. Zinvax commanded, but it was too late. The nearest drone suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, its structure literally turning inside out before imploding into a point of light. The second drone began spinning wildly, broadcasting a cacophony of contradictory sensor data before its systems melted down. The third drone simply vanished, as if it had never existed. Silence fell over the command center. Zinvax's crystalline form had shifted to a pale white of shock. What in the name of the first light just happened? Before anyone could respond, a message appeared across every display in the command center, written in perfectly formed Naxidian script. Curiosity is admirable. Invasion of privacy is not. This is your only warning. The message lingered for exactly 3 seconds before disappearing. When it vanished, all logs of the scanning attempt went with it, leaving no trace in the ship's quantum memory banks. Second Observer Mrix, who had been analyzing the sensor logs, spoke up. Director, I have a theory. The humans. I believe they've developed quantum mirror technology. Impossible, Zinvax stated. Their civilization is centuries away from such capabilities. Not traditional quantum mirrors, Mrix continued, her form shifting through analytical patterns. Something different. The scans showed temporal displacement signatures. I think they found a way to create localized time loops. When our scans hit their ship, they weren't just being reflected. They were being trapped in microscopic temporal corridors, creating feedback loops that amplified and distorted our own scanning beams. Fleet Director Zinvax moved to the main viewport, studying the distant human vessel. It remained there, seemingly harmless, yet now radiating an almost palpable sense of danger. The implications were staggering. If humans had mastered this level of quantum manipulation, what other capabilities were they hiding? Contact the High Council, she ordered. Priority Alpha, and maintain distance from that vessel. No more scans. As the communication officers rushed to comply, Zinvax continued to watch the Prometheus Axiom. The humans had always been considered a young, relatively primitive species. But now they had demonstrated technology that shouldn't be possible. Technology that turned the very act of observation against the observer. One more thing, she added, her voice carrying a new edge of respect and wariness. Update all fleet protocols regarding human vessels. Classification level, Omega. Threat assessment, maximum. And add a new standing order. Under no circumstances are we to attempt deep scans of human ships without direct authorization from the High Council. The Prometheus axiom remained motionless in space, its dark hull reflecting nothing, revealing nothing. But its message had been received clearly. Humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had suspected, and they had just demonstrated why it was sometimes better not to look too closely at things you didn't understand. In the following hours, as reports were filed and analyses were attempted, one question kept circulating through the crystalline minds of the Naxidian crew. If this was the capability of a single human research vessel, what other secrets was humanity keeping? And more importantly, what would happen if someone pushed them too far? The answer would come sooner than any of them expected, and it would shake the foundations of their understanding of both humanity and the nature of space-time itself. The Naxidian High Council's chamber was a marvel of crystalline architecture, its walls refracting light in complex patterns that served as both art and data transmission. But today, those patterns were chaotic, reflecting the agitation of the 12 council members as they reviewed Fleet Director Zinvax's report. Preposterous, declared High Councilor Venare, his crystalline form pulsing with skeptical red frequencies. Humans cannot possess such technology. They were mining helium-3 with chemical rockets less than 2 centuries ago. The evidence is undeniable, Zinvax responded, projecting the surviving sensor data. 3 quantum-enhanced probe drones, completely neutralized. And this message. She displayed the warning text that had appeared on their screens. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. First speaker NYXX finally broke the quiet, her voice resonating through the crystalline architecture. We must know more. The security of our empire depends on understanding the full extent of human capabilities. I strongly advise against further scanning attempts, Zinvax warned, but she could see her words falling on deaf receptors. The council had made its decision. Within 12 hours, a task force of 5 Naxidian warships, led by the advanced research vessel Quantum Seeker, approached the Prometheus axiom. The human ship hadn't moved from its position, maintaining its silent vigil at the edge of Naxidian space. On board the Quantum Seeker, Chief Researcher Drelmix made final adjustments to their new scanning array. We've modified the quantum sensors to operate on rotating frequencies, he explained to the assembled command staff. If their defense system relies on temporal loops, we should be able to prevent feedback by constantly shifting our scan patterns. Task Force Commander Uraleth nodded, her crystalline form showing patterns of both anticipation and concern. Proceed with the scan, but be prepared to terminate at the first sign of anomalies. The modified scan beam lanced out from the Quantum Seeker, enveloping the human vessel in a web of quantum energy. For the first few seconds, everything seemed to work as planned. Data began flowing in, penetrating deeper than any previous scan. We're getting something, Drelmix announced excitedly. Internal structure becoming visible. Wait. His voice faltered. This can't be right. The internal dimensions, they're impossible. The scan data showed corridors that twisted in non-Euclidean patterns, rooms that existed in multiple spatial dimensions simultaneously, and energy signatures that seemed to flow backward through time. But before anyone could process these impossibilities, the human ship responded. A pulse of energy, invisible to normal sensors but devastating in its effect, rippled out from the Prometheus axiom. Where it touched the Naxidian ships, reality itself seemed to stutter. Crew members reported seeing multiple versions of themselves, some moving backward, others frozen in time. Full retreat, Commander Yaraleth ordered, but the ship's engines refused to respond. The pulse had somehow entangled their quantum drives with localized time distortions. Then, a new message appeared, this time accompanied by a visual transmission. A human figure materialized on their screens, wearing what appeared to be a standard research uniform. But something was off about their appearance. The image seemed to shift and change, as if multiple timelines were overlapping. "Your persistence is noted," the human said, their voice somehow speaking in perfect Naxidian despite their human mouth movements. "But you fail to understand. The Prometheus axiom isn't just a ship. It's a proof of concept." The figure smiled, and in that smile, the Naxidian saw the future of warfare change forever. Humanity has learned to weaponize causality itself. Your scanning attempts haven't just been blocked. They've been studying you, analyzing your technology, your tactics, your thought processes. Every scan you've attempted has given us years of research data, compressed into moments through temporal manipulation. Commander Yaraletha's crystalline form had frozen in a pattern of pure shock. "Why? Why reveal this to us now?" "Because," the human replied, "you needed to understand that the age of conventional warfare is over. Humanity doesn't need massive fleets or superior numbers. We have mastered something far more fundamental, the ability to turn scientific curiosity itself into a weapon." The human's image began to fade, but their final words echoed through every crystal and circuit in the Naxidian fleet. "Consider this a diplomatic courtesy. The next species that attempts to probe our capabilities won't receive a warning. They'll simply find their scan results rewriting their own history." As suddenly as it had begun, the temporal distortions ceased. The Naxidian ship's systems returned to normal, but their sensor logs showed something impossible. According to their chronometers, the entire incident had taken both 3 hours and no time at all. The Prometheus axiom disappeared, not through any visible means of propulsion, but by seemingly folding itself through dimensions that shouldn't exist. It left behind no trace of its presence except for a profound change in the Naxidian understanding of their place in the galaxy. In the days that followed, the High Council would debate for countless hours about how to respond to this revelation. But in the end, they reached a unanimous decision. All records of the encounter would be classified at the highest level, and a new protocol would be established. From that day forward, any human vessel, no matter how small or seemingly primitive, would be given the widest possible berth. Because the Naxidians had learned a crucial lesson. In their quest to understand humanity's capabilities, they had instead revealed their own limitations. The humans hadn't just developed new technology, they had fundamentally changed the rules of what was possible. And somewhere out there, the Prometheus axiom continued its mission, a silent guardian carrying a simple message to any who dared look too closely. Humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, but their ability to turn an adversary's curiosity into their own undoing. Word of the Prometheus axiom incident spread through the galactic community like quantum fire. The Naxidian Empire's humbling encounter with human temporal technology sent shockwaves through diplomatic channels, despite their best efforts to classify the information. Other species began reporting similar encounters, research vessels that defied conventional physics, survey ships that seemed to exist in multiple time streams simultaneously. The Zarkel Collective, renowned for their predictive matrices and probability engines, convened an emergency session. Their vast computational arrays, housed in the crystalline spires of their homeworld, worked ceaselessly to calculate the implications of humanity's temporal mastery. "The algorithms cannot compute a reliable future timeline," announced Grand Architect Junthex, her holographic form flickering with distress patterns. "Every simulation involving human expansion creates cascade failures in our probability engines." In the observation chamber of the collective's primary computational nexus, representatives from 17 spacefaring civilizations gathered. The Naxidian delegation, led by Fleet Director Zinvax, stood apart from the others, their crystalline forms still bearing the subtle temporal scarring from their encounter. "We must consider the possibility," Zinvax addressed the assembly, "that humanity has achieved what we long thought impossible. They've broken free from linear temporal progression." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. The Mechanian ambassador, A towering construct of quantum-linked processors and advanced metalloids stepped forward. Our analysis suggests something far more disturbing. The humans aren't simply manipulating time, they're evolving beyond its constraints. Holographic displays materialized throughout the chamber, showing recordings from various encounters with human vessels. Each incident revealed increasingly sophisticated applications of temporal technology. Ships that could rewrite their own history, weapons that aged their targets into dust, shields that prevented attacks by calculating every possible trajectory and neutralizing them before they occurred. Look at the progression, the Mechanian ambassador continued. These aren't merely technological advances. They're implementing these changes at a rate that defies evolutionary mathematics. It's as if they're receiving information from their future selves, completed Junthex, her holographic form temporarily splitting into multiple probability shadows. The implications stunned the assembly into silence. Humanity hadn't just mastered time. They had turned temporal mechanics into a medium for their own accelerated evolution. Each encounter, each scan, each attempted intervention had provided them with data from countless potential futures, allowing them to cherry-pick the most advantageous developments and implement them in the present. A representative from the ethereal consensus, beings of pure energy and thought, pulsed with revelation. The Prometheus axiom wasn't just a ship, it was a temporal anchor point. Every species that attempted to scan it inadvertently contributed to humanity's evolutionary leap. We've been unwitting participants in their advancement. Fleet Director Zinvax's crystalline form shifted to a deep indigo of realization. That's why they let us attempt the second scan. They wanted us to gather the other species here, to share what we learned. This meeting, this very moment, it's exactly what they planned. As if in response to her words, every computational device in the chamber activated simultaneously. Streams of data flowed across screens and through neural interfaces, showing a single, unified message. Thank you for your participation in humanity's temporal evolution initiative. Your contributions have been invaluable. Phase 1 is now complete. The message lingered for precisely 1 second before disappearing, taking with it all records of its existence. But its impact remained, leaving the assembled representatives with the devastating understanding that they hadn't just witnessed humanity's rise to temporal mastery. They had been instrumental in causing it. In the days that followed, the various species attempted to process this revelation. The Zarkel Collective's probability engines began producing new predictions, showing timeline branches where humanity had already achieved things that should take millennia of development. The Mechanian systems detected temporal echoes suggesting that human technology had been influencing their own development in subtle ways for centuries. The ethereal consensus proposed a radical theory. Humanity hadn't just developed time manipulation technology, they had turned the very concept of technological advancement into a temporal loop. Every attempt to understand their capabilities had fed into their development, creating a self-reinforcing cycle of evolution that transcended linear time. Fleet Director Zinvax, in her final report to the Naxidian High Council before her retirement, wrote words that would be studied by xenohistorians for generations. We thought we were observing humanity's present, but we were actually participating in their past, present, and future simultaneously. They didn't just master time. They made time itself their ally in evolution. The Prometheus axiom was never seen again, but its legacy reshaped galactic civilization. Species that had once viewed humanity as primitive now recognized them as architects of their own evolution, capable of turning the very fabric of space-time into a tool for advancement. The age of linear technological progression was over, replaced by an era where humanity's influence echoed backward and forward through time, guiding their development along paths that existed outside conventional causality. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, human ships continued their silent vigil, each one a nexus of temporal possibility, each encounter a carefully orchestrated step in an evolutionary dance that had already been completed, was currently unfolding, and had yet to begin, all at the same time. One standard galactic year after the Prometheus axiom incident, the impossible happened again. Throughout known space, ancient ruins began appearing on previously barren worlds, ruins that carbon dated to millions of years in the past, yet bore unmistakably human architecture. More disturbingly, these structures contained technological interfaces perfectly adapted to each discovering species' biology. On the crystalline world of Nax Prime, Fleet Director Zinvax, now serving as special advisor to the High Council, stood before a holographic representation of these discoveries. Her form had taken on the rare silver hue of profound contemplation. They didn't just master time, she announced to the assembled council. They colonized it. The latest findings from the Mecanian deep space expeditions confirmed her theory. Every discovered ruin contained quantum computers that activated upon discovery, revealing fragments of what appeared to be a vast temporal network. The humans hadn't just spread across space, they had distributed their influence across time itself. Consider the implications, Database Administrator Krell explained, his photoreceptors pulsing with intensity. These ruins aren't remnants of an ancient human civilization. They're terminals in a temporal communication network that exists across all of history. The evidence was undeniable. Each ruin contained technology that seemed to anticipate not just the discoverer's current technological level, but their future development paths. The interfaces evolved in real time, always remaining exactly one step ahead of any attempt to fully comprehend them. Deep in the heart of Zarkel space, their probability engines began detecting something even more extraordinary, temporal wake patterns suggesting that human influence had been subtly guiding galactic development for eons. Not through direct intervention, but through carefully placed technological breadcrumbs that shaped the evolution of every space-faring species. It's the ultimate expression of temporal engineering, June Thex observed, her holographic form splitting into 1,000 probability shadows. They didn't change history, they grew it, like a garden cultivated across time itself. The ethereal consensus, after months of deep meditation in the quantum substrate of reality, emerged with a startling revelation. The temporal network wasn't just a communication system. It was a vast computational array using time itself as processing power. Every discovery, every interaction, every attempt to understand the ruins added to its capabilities. But it was the Mecanian ambassador who uncovered the true purpose of this temporal architecture. These aren't just ruins or terminals, the quantum-enhanced being announced during an emergency session of the Galactic Conclave. They're nodes in a vast temporal defense system. Humanity didn't just prepare for future threats, they retroactively protected themselves across all of history. As if triggered by this realization, new data streams began emerging from the ruins. They showed glimpses of potential futures, terrible futures, where various species attempted to eliminate humanity before its rise to temporal dominance. Each of these futures ended the same way, with the attacking civilization discovering that their own technological development had been subtly guided by human influence. Their very weapons and strategies designed to fail against temporal defenses planted millions of years in their past. Fleet Director Zinvax, studying these revelations, finally understood the full scope of human ingenuity. The Prometheus axiom wasn't just a demonstration, she told the Naxidian High Council. It was a courtesy call, letting us know that the game was already over before it began. Humanity didn't just achieve temporal supremacy, they retroactively ensured they had always had it. The implications rewrote the understanding of galactic politics overnight. How could you wage war against an enemy that had already seeded your civilization's entire history with defensive measures? How could you outmaneuver opponents who had manufactured your very concept of strategy? But perhaps most chilling was the message found encoded in the quantum structure of every ruin, written in mathematical constants that transcended language. We are humanity. We have always been here. We will always be here. Time is not our master. It is our medium. The future you see is the one we grew. The history you know is the one we cultivated. Your discovery of this message was anticipated and has already been incorporated into the greater design. Welcome to the Garden of Time. As galactic civilization grappled with these revelations, a new understanding emerged. Humanity hadn't just mastered temporal mechanics. They had transcended the very concept of technological advancement. They had turned time itself into a canvas, painting their influence across the ages with brushstrokes of carefully placed artifacts and subtle manipulations. And somewhere, in every moment of past, present, and future, human ships like the Prometheus Axiom continued their patrol, maintaining the integrity of this temporal garden. They were no longer just vessels of exploration or defense. They were gardeners of time itself, tending to a crop that had been growing since the beginning of history, would always be growing, and had already produced fruit that shaped the very nature of reality. The age of linear progression was truly over. The era of temporal cultivation had begun. And humanity, its architects and gardeners, watched from every moment in history as their greatest creation, a galaxy grown through time itself, continued to flourish exactly as they had always ensured it would. When the ruins began singing, even the most hardened skeptics of human temporal manipulation fell silent. The harmonics weren't sound waves, they were vibrations in space-time itself, resonating across dimensions and patterns that defied conventional physics. The Mecanian quantum arrays translated these temporal frequencies into something the gathered species could comprehend. Humanity's grand design was entering its next phase. In the crystalline observation dome of the Naxidian flagship Eternal Contemplation, Fleet Director Zinvax watched as reality itself seemed to shimmer. Her form had taken on an unprecedented chromatic pattern, one that reflected both wonder and terror. "They're not just messages," she whispered, studying the temporal harmonics. "They're activation signals." Across the galaxy, the ancient ruins humanity had seeded throughout time began transforming. Structures that had appeared to be simple monitoring stations revealed themselves as nodes in an incomprehensibly vast temporal engine. Each site began projecting fields that altered the very flow of time and expanding bubbles of influence. The Zarkel Collective's probability engines, trying to calculate the implications, underwent spontaneous evolution. Their quantum cores restructured themselves into new configurations that could process temporal data across multiple timelines simultaneously. The machines hadn't been hacked or reprogrammed. They had been designed, millions of years ago, to transform at precisely this moment. "We never truly owned our technology," the Mecanian ambassador realized, its quantum consciousness expanding through newly discovered dimensional layers. Everything we built, every advancement we achieved, was part of their blueprint. We weren't just guided, we were grown. The ethereal consensus, beings of pure energy and thought, detected something even more profound. The temporal harmonics weren't just activating hidden technology, they were triggering changes in the evolutionary patterns of every space-faring species. Genetic sequences that had laid dormant for millions of years began expressing themselves, unlocking capabilities that seemed impossible. This was their true masterpiece, Junthex announced, her holographic form now stable across multiple probability streams. They didn't just seed technology through time, they seeded potential. Every species in the galaxy has been carrying human-engineered temporal genes, waiting for this moment of activation. The changes were subtle but profound. The Naxidians discovered their crystalline forms could now naturally perceive and process temporal information. The Mecanians found their quantum networks could extend through time as easily as space. The ethereal consensus realized they could exist across multiple moments simultaneously. But it was database administrator Krell who decoded the purpose behind these transformations. "We're not being uplifted," he explained, his photoreceptors now capable of seeing through time itself. "We're being prepared. The temporal harmonics, they're a warning." Deep analysis of the temporal frequencies revealed the truth. Humanity hadn't just been protecting themselves or establishing dominance. They had spent millions of years preparing the galaxy for something coming from outside time itself. The ruins, the temporal networks, the carefully guided evolution of every species, it was all preparation for a threat that existed beyond conventional reality. The message, when finally decoded, was both simple and terrifying. The barriers between realities are thinning. What lies beyond time has taken notice of this universe. We have spent eons preparing the garden, cultivating the species of this galaxy into temporal aware beings. The harvest comes not to end life, but to transform it. When they breach our reality, they will find not primitive civilizations bound by linear time, but a galaxy of beings ready to defend existence itself. The implications staggered even the most advanced minds. Humanity hadn't conquered time out of ambition or desire for power. They had done it out of necessity, recognizing a threat so vast that it required restructuring the entire history of the galaxy to prepare for it. Fleet Director Zinvax, watching temporal distortions ripple across space, understood at last. "We thought we were victims of their manipulation," she told the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. "But we were seeds in their garden, carefully nurtured across time until we could bloom into something greater." As if in response to this realization, new structures began manifesting throughout space, not emerging from hyperspace or being constructed, but simply shifting into phase with current reality. They were human ships, but unlike anything seen before. These vessels existed simultaneously across all timelines, their very structure a testament to mastery over temporal mechanics. The lead ship, dwarfing even the largest known vessels, transmitted a simple message across all frequencies, in all languages, through all points in time simultaneously. To all species of the temporal garden, your evolution is complete. The time has come to take your place as defenders of reality itself. The enemy approaches not through space, but through the cracks between moments. Together, we stand guard not just over this galaxy, but over the very concept of existence. Welcome to humanity's final protocol, the defense of time itself. The galaxy watched in awe as the human vessels took up formation around temporal nexus points. They were no longer mysterious observers or hidden manipulators. They were guardians, revealing at last the true purpose behind eons of careful cultivation.